While we're getting started here, I just want to let you folks know how I'm going to be approaching office hours. So generally from about 4 to 5, I'm around, but I'm not just sitting in a Zoom meeting. So if you have something you want to talk about, some sort of question, whether it be about our class, the language, college, classes, I don't get into personal stuff. I've had it, like, you know, I had a student come in and they're like, should I break up with my boyfriend and go? And I was like, I don't know. I'll tell you what class to take. But if you want to talk about classes and what have you, go ahead, you know, like send me an email and then we can set up a time to just jump into a Zoom chat. And it could be through the class. If you have something that is sort of more personal, like, and it could be like, you know, something that you're worried about with class or something that's preventing you from succeeding or anything you're looking to chat about. I'm open to that, you know, absolutely. And so if that's the case, you can ask for a private meeting and I could send you a link and we can chat. So I just want to make sure you know you've got you've got some access if you want. And then, but don't feel like you have to, because we're all busy, right? We all got lots of stuff going on. But certainly if you had things you want to talk about, then just let me know. And then, anybody got any questions to get us started? Anything you're thinking about with the language or anything at all on your mind, anything you want to share?
Well, I talked to Smitty yesterday and I got a recording of him talking about driving, just a curiosity from what we talked about. And real quick. Can you hear that okay? So I guess that is the way they're saying it here.
The line gets pretty blurred. So I think Tlingit has some really interesting things that it shares with the interior, which it makes a lot of sense. You have lots of contact and you still have, at least you had quite a few speakers, right? And so speakers were still going into the interior and then also, you know, coming back. And then there could be just something about the location and the people and the migrations. And so the dialects tell us all about migrations. There's a bunch of stuff to really sort of examine there in terms of these vowel switches and sometimes the different words for different things, but yeah, or different words for the same thing. Sheesh. Anyone else?
Journal Tlingit khosheket just again isitee isitee ya Daaḳw.aa pekonas art kaye aya gukhtati shach kedate isahu yawat ai chayu gukha iitsa in us idayek iyak eli khani Nest kwakch agawe atayat ach iduwasáakw. At kogo ach twasagu Linux. Chat aya gachas I kenaltin. Put away ach I yiddish please.
Oh, okay. Good sheesh. I think, let's see, yeast, cool. I think that looks good.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that looks good. It eats in would be, you'd probably say in to just carry it around. So then there's a few different parts to carrying things. Well, I guess there's two main parts. One is what kind of thing is it, and that'll tell you which verb to use. And then the second part is how are you going to carry it around? You're going to give it to somebody, take it somewhere. You're just going to walk around with it. And so they're all motion verbs. And so what you'll all find is like there's a special category of, well, first of all, every Tlingit verb belongs to what we call a conjugation class, which means it's a specific type of thing. And so generally, you can think of a zero type of thing as a default or something that comes to a specified end. Then there's a na, and I'm saying these like there's zero, na, ga, and qa. I'll come back to those. And then there's a na type of thing, which means there's just not a specified end. It's just kind of going along. Then there's a ga type of thing, which is upward. And there's a qa kind of thing, which is downward. So knowing which type it is, it will be revealed in the command form. So if you can get someone to tell you, like, how do you make something to say, do the thing or whatever. For example, if you wanted to tell someone to eat it, like you gave them this piece of food, and you wanted them to eat it, the command form would be kha. And so it just goes, all you're saying is the root of the verb, right? And so if you tell them to go to sleep, right? And I don't know if we did this before, but how do you tell someone to go to sleep?
Nata.
Nata, right? So then that's a na, so that na is on there. And then you tell them to stand up, you say gidahan, so the ga is on the front. And you tell them to sit down, they say qanu, so the qa is on the front. So every Tlingit verb belongs to one of those four. And it's just generally sort of in the Tlingit mind, it is that type of thing. So like, and there'll be other ways, like in the future, you'll see it too, like when it says ye akuchtagan, that's a downward thing because ye is downward. And if you say at, that's an upward thing. So K is up, ye is down. So those will help signal which one it might be. And it matters because when you get into motion verbs, a motion verb is just different than the rest because there's these types of verbs as well. So this is where Tlingit's like got so many categories, right? So every verb has one of these four classes that it belongs to: zero, na, ga, qa. In addition, there are types of verbs. So there's an act verb for somebody to do something, usually to something. There's an event verb for something to happen. There's a state verb for something to be a certain way. There's a motion verb for something to move, and a position verb for something to be located somewhere. And this is sort of a sneak preview because you're gonna start seeing this stuff when you look up a verb nowadays in the materials that we're creating. It gives you all the information you need, but this long string of information that looks really sometimes kind of confusing. But once you start getting the decoder key, it's like, oh, now I know when I say the command form, I've got to put that ga in there, right? Like when you tell someone to be good, igake, it's got to have that ga in there. The difference with, so all these other ones, they kind of have this thing, right? So you just got to remember when you have the qasi'at, that the ga is in there. And same with the yak-a, it's a ga. And then ta, sleeping, is a na. And then there's a few, so you'll just remember this stuff. But with a motion verb, it could be any one of the four. So that's where the motion verbs get kind of really interesting, is because that's going to determine some things about the, you know, whether you're going to have gut, uwa gut, or woo good. That's all determined by the conjugation type. So you'd say, they woo good. They went there, and nicht uwa gut. They went home. They made it home. So it's just tough to think. And so carrying verbs get really challenging because there's 16 different ways to say, bring it here or hand it to me. And it depends on what it is. So yeah, you've got the sa'in. So, so then if that changes to a high tone, at, so that the high tone is to go around at a place, and then you would say nasa'in.
Oh, nasa'in.
So it switched to a na. Because like if you wanted to tell someone, hey, go drive around, at naqoch, guk, and then just get in a car and just go cruising. So that at is just the going around, it's cruising, going for a walk. Oh, atwu good. And you could go walking around near somewhere. Like, so you say atwu good, ayach. They went walking around down by the lake. But you could say ayach tewu good. They went down to the lake. And then those are, so Tlingit is always categorizing stuff. But yeah, it was good. And then yetayi doesn't need to have the yawa. So it just goes to yetayi for the hot tea.
Oh.
And that would be right there too. So yetayi would be yetayi chayu. Mm-hmm. And then yetayi at. Mm-hmm. And I would expect the first A to be a high tone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks good.
Geez, I copied a lot of these phrases from Tlingit Dasa, and it was kind of nice to just like copy them straight over to what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that book, when it came out, it was so amazing because we were, you know, I was an intermediate learner, and I was just, I could just put a whole thing together just using this book, which is great. So like when we have these assignments, like do a language performance, write a letter, you can pull sentences right out of some of these sources. I'll show you folks what text. It's Tlingit naax is what it's called. So the older version has a spiral bound. The newer version is, what do you call it, with the glued back? I don't know what it's called, like a paperback type of thing. And then you can get it through Amazon. There's also scanned copies on tlingitlanguage.com. Then there was a subsequent related set of CDs that came out with a booklet called Tlingit naax. And so someone brought up the fact that it'd be nice to have that one available. So let me show you folks where to find some of this stuff. So for here, you can go to resources and beginning materials. And even if you're not a beginner, this is where you should go to look at things, because you should make sure you have all of these things, right? So here's the beginning Tlingit workbook, the Tlingit dictionary, the Tlingit verb dictionary. Here's the database that Carrie Eggleston put together. Here's a couple of textbooks by the children of the Daaḳw Society. So they're teaching in Atlin and Whitehorse. And then you go down and here's some slideshows on pronunciation and videos. Here's the main slideshow that we sort of went through, I think, when we're kind of looking at the pictures of things and trying to get the names of them. Here's that slideshow we did with questions, how to put questions together. And then here's the original beginning Tlingit by Nora Marks Dowenhauer and Richard Dowenhauer, which the workbook is totally just based off of Dictionary of Tlingit, Interior Tlingit Dictionary. So this one is Tlingit naax, which is a book of phrases. And we'll actually go through, we'll just go through maybe a chapter and we'll just sort of look at some of these. And then here's Tlingit naax. This is the scanned booklet that was in the CD. And then here's the audio files. So this one has audio files. So if you clicked on this one, oh, there it is. So then here it is. So it's based, you know, they made them one right after another, maybe a few years apart. And so when you listen to this, this is Carrie and Johnny Marks. And so you'll see the English here, and then you'll see how to say it, you know, like which is literally like I'm gonna go underneath sleep, which is pretty fun. And then with the audio, you can download those audio files, load it up on your devices, walk around, listen to them. And it kind of goes through these sections like bedtime, body parts, with the body parts. So like if you say like chik and you learn how to say chik, it's like the upper arm. Just remember with body parts, they need to have something to belong to. So usually you're going to say ach right in front of it for my, or I for your, or du for a singular there. So you say like ach guk, ach wak, ach shechawu, ach sha. And so then you go into color. Here's coming and going. So we can listen to how he's saying like go, and then going outside. What are you doing? What are you working on? What do you want to do? And then so there's a whole then feelings. There's a whole bunch of different feelings on here. Some different sort of day-to-day phrases, greetings and departures, introductions, kinship, and then just sort of some things, language, location, direction, and then a few commands, you know, is I'm really like a whirlpool. That's what it literally means. So it's pretty fun. Yeah, then they got cooking, doing work, like, you know, do your schoolwork. So it's work on your school paper. And then, yeah, and you'll see, I think I was talking to someone yesterday about like, see this ne or nay. This is something that you're gonna just watch for, right? So you see it in yejene for work. You see it in yeausane for fixing or just doing. And you see it in atwune for like something happened. It's like, wasa atwune, what happened? Wasa atnene, what's happening? And then you can change that to say like doing things. And so this yenasne could be used for a whole bunch of things, right? So you could say Daaḳw.aa, get the table ready. Isitee, clean your room. And so like the verb itself isn't changing a whole, it's just saying fix it up, get it ready is what it's saying. Related, you know, the same verb root, you get are you ready? Yes, I'm ready, right? So ready, working on, doing. It's a really kind of a catch-all type of verb. It's the doer. This would be the yenasne might be the phrase that would go under the Nike swoosh, right? So really handy stuff that's in here too. So this gives us more and more things to absorb, more phrases to learn. And as far as putting things together, there's a lot you could do with this one, and then we'll take a look at the other one as well.
When is your beginner workbook, the printed ones, going to be available?
I don't know. They're kind of stuck in a review process right now. So I'm supposed to meet about that soon and see.
Okay.
It might be a minute. So.
When I put my kids to bed, I tell them, not today, but I also say kadashuk. Just wanted to check, see if that's right for like close your eyes.
Oh yeah, yeah. So let's take a look at this database as well to show you folks how to just sort of do a quick double check of a verb, right? So here's whoops, let's go back. So again, there's multiple places you could go. So from our class webpage, which is Intermediate Tlingit, you should be able to get there. You go down, and this is called the verb database webpage. And so this, when you click there, this is what it looks like. And so what this is a whole bunch of verb roots. And so what you're going to learn is that Tlingit verbs have a root. Every verb is going to have a root. And in that root is the meaning, right? So for example, here's a verb that you may or may not know, shichan. It's fragrant. It's not always stinky, but it could be stinky, and it could be just strong smelling, like the blossom of a mountain ash, a feather from a bird, right? It just has this, somebody's feet when they were playing basketball all day, sure, yeah, those are all shichan, right? So the chun part, that has the meaning, right? And that means to stink or to be fragrant. And then you can add things to get new verbs off of it. So one thing you can do is just sort of like, how do you use this stuff? Well, you can just sort of go through and take a look and find things that are useful, right? So what are the, like, cha is a useful thing. So we go down, it's alphabetical, and here's cha, to eat, and to eat it. And now I can look at this and I can, and so basically when you click on the blue, it's going to expand. And then what you have here is everything that's yellow is a verb that exists within that verb root. Every root can have different verbs. Some of them have lots, some of them only have a couple, maybe even one. So for this one, and then if you click on the yellow, now it'll expand and it'll show you how to say a command form, eat it. A prohibitive form, don't eat it. Imperfective, eating it right now. Negative imperfective, not eating it or doesn't eat it. Progressive imperfective, in the process of eating it. Used to eat it, didn't used to eat it. This one is one of the most common that you're gonna have to learn. It's called a perfective. And that means ate it, right? I ate it. And then you could say didn't eat it. Will eat it, won't eat it. Then there's a few after that that get pretty complicated. Let me eat it, let them eat it, always eats it every time, hasn't eaten it yet, can't eat it, would have eaten it, if or when they eat it, and then eats it regularly. And so a lot of your time in the second semester of Intermediate Tlingit and in Advanced Tlingit is going to be spent absorbing more verbs and understanding more about how they work. For now, you can look this stuff up, which is great. Like, oh, I want to say he ate some dry fish, right? So then you could say iduwasáakw. It's right there. And then you could change iduwasáakw to whatever it is they ate, right? So the other thing you can do is on a Mac, it's Control F or Command F, I think on a Windows computer, it might be Windows F or whatever, however you get to the search thing. So now you can go to search and I could say close, right? And so now this will look in English for everything that says close, right? So there's two of them here. And so in this case, I can expand that one and then we get close your eyes. And then we can look and we see ki de and ki de. So is what we're looking for. And then kida and kiida. So it's just got a little extra E in there. If we go down to the perfective, it's not listed here, but kai de would be you closed your eyes, as in like you've already done it. You're just telling someone they did it. But ki de and ki de are the command forms of that. And we used to say iwak, kai de. And an elder said, you don't have to say wak. It means close your eyes. You don't have to say your eyes, close your eyes. So like some things are just built right into the verb, which is really interesting. Like we were doing a little book project, which was fun. It's on iBooks now. He's trying to experiment with ways to get stuff out there. And it's a book where there's a little button and it can read the words for you. And it's about cutting a fish. And there's a guy in Daaḳw.aa, very fast at cutting fish. And then and we just took some pictures from it. And then, but what's neat is there's names for each of those fins. And then what's even neater is there's a verb you can use for cutting it off, right? Achash. And that works for everything else. But when you turn it over and you put that knife in the belly, now you get a whole different verb. So we have a specific verb for cutting something open to clean out its insides. But then we have a specific verb for cutting open a fish to clean out the insides. And so it's really wild when you start to learn Tlingit, because sometimes the answer is like, oh yeah, we got a verb for that. And it's a very specific thing. Great question, Sheesh. And so yeah, use this, bookmark it, take a look at it. Just start opening stuff up and just start looking at them. If there's something you're trying to figure out how to say. Because one of the things that she really did a great job with was working with speakers and learners and just saying, what do you guys need to know how to say? And because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of verbs. And she's got probably about 1,200 in here. So it's really amazing. Okay. Anything else was on your mind?
I was recently at the UAS campus here at Juneau, and the sign said Akwan Ani Kach, and I was wondering what the Kach meant.
Uh-huh. So yeah, another great question. So what we're going to do is, I think we're going to kind of just start splitting our time between moving through the beginning Tlingit workbook and then starting to move into some intermediate concepts. So we're going to start with, like, how do you change a noun? Like, so how do you possess it? How do you do some different things for it? And then the thing we do after that is, how do you talk about like where things are and where they're going and these relationships between them? And so one of the things is like, so Daaḳw is the name of, it's a little lake. So this is a noun that has a modifier on it. It has a suffix, which means little. Kwan is an ancestral group of Tlingit people. So they're connected to a very specific place, right? So these are the people of the little lake. Ani is a possessed form of land. So on is a village or land or a really big boat. And then ani is the possessed form of that. So you can say an, ach ani, ha'ani, and then ka on its own, or ka, is on, right? So, but the thing, so this type of thing, the ka, is what we call a postposition. And the reason we call it a postposition, in English they call it a preposition. So what do you think that tells you, the preposition and the postposition? Pre and post, right? So it's called a preposition in English because it comes before the word that it's talking about, right? So I'll say, on the table. In Tlingit, Daaḳw is table, ka is on. So the word order, it's a different word order. So you'll say, Daaḳw ka, on the table, right? And so now the ka is on. And so now we could talk about a whole bunch of things, on the house, on the rock, on the car, whatever. But then you put the at the end. So Tlingit, it likes to have these postpositions to talk about where things are, but then sometimes it needs to talk about, well, how is it there? Is it resting there? Did it arrive there? Is it moving around there? And so that's what the is doing. So kach would mean residing or at rest on something. So you could say nich kach, on the beach. You could say Daaḳw kach, on the table. But in the what the X does, it's sort of like it's really at rest there, you know, because you could be there and have recently arrived. You could be there repeatedly, and so that's the other thing is we're going to learn is like these things that talk about direction and location is sometimes, and so Aqquan on the land of the Aqquan. Right, and so now you can be all kinds of places, right? So now you could say, I'm on the land of the Chilkoot people, or even get out of Tlingit country, right? You say, I'm on the land of the Gwich'in people. So that's what that part is doing. Another good question. Yeah, as you see the language out there and you're trying to use it, like just think of these things that you could bring here, because the other fun part of here is, and some of you have been doing this for quite a while, but others, like you're starting to try to use the language and you got to take it with you everywhere you go. And then what you got to do is figure out, like, what do I want to know how to say? And then come here and we'll try and figure out how to say it. Because that's a really important part, is that you're living with the language. And the more you use it, the more you're going to realize where these gaps are in your knowledge. And it could be, boy, I'm figuring this stuff out, but I don't know how to say, you know, I wanted to say we saw it, and I know how to say I saw it. So how do I say we saw it? And so what we'll do is we'll kind of jump out and take a look at that. And then we're going to start walking through some lessons that get us up to that kind of content too. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so I thought for tonight, we'll start looking at this chapter 3 in the beginning of Tlingit workbook. Then we'll take a break, and then we're going to look at how to put suffixes on the nouns. So I thought those would be the two things we'll try tonight. Were we supposed to do some kind of competition? We're supposed to do like plants or something, birds?
Keach, as, ikikwim.
Maybe we might save that for Tuesday. We'll see. Give folks a chance to just really ingest your lists of plants. And so it's pretty common when I tell people, I was like, okay, list a bunch of animals. And they're like, naming all these animals. I'm like, okay, list some water animals. They're naming all these things in the water. I was like, tell me some plants. And they list like 3. And then they just they just, I don't know. So the plant world is neglected. Remember, this does include berries, trees, grasses, mosses, mushrooms. Just go find them. Find a bunch of names, write them down, walk around, say their names, look at them. Then when we come back on Tuesday, you gotta bring it from your memory. Don't look at your notes. I can't really tell, but don't look at your notes. Cool. Dasa.
Have you ever, I mean, I guess I should look it up before I ask, but I was going to ask about caribou leaves that we use for colds. I've looked at the old dictionaries, but I haven't looked at your new one yet. So is there a word that we know of for those caribou leaves?
Isitee.
Okay. That's caribou leaves.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't like an older name of it, huh?
Well, that's the old name. I mean, it just
Really?
food. So it's in Jeff's dictionary. It's probably in the new one that I was working on. But Mary Anderson is the one who told me that, and she's from Atlin, and she was elderly at the time, and she was the one who brought that stuff for us to use. And so we asked her what it was called, and that's what she said.
Amazing. Geez.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of things too that like there's a word naax. I'll put it in the chat because we want to make sure that, because naax is medicine, and we want to make sure we're not getting that confused with naax, which is an octopus, and we're not getting that confused with naax, which is what do you call it, like rotted, and it's not just rotted wood, but we live in a rainforest, so like if a piece of wood's just sitting there on the ground for a long time, it gets all super soft. They call it punky wood, where it just kind of gets real crumbly. That's naax. So naax is medicine, but it's really interesting the way that it's used, because the name for insect repellent is Daaḳw.aa. And so it's a repellent, right? And so that would literally translate as the one that bites, which is the word for mosquito. So mosquito's medicine. But then there's a few others that are just really, like peppermint is called Daaḳw. And then sage is called Tlingit, the ground squirrel medicine. So it could be, there could be something about it where like, it's not like that thing uses it for medicine, but it could be something that we use to protect us against some of those things sometimes. I don't know. It's worth it checking out. Okay. Okay, I like open conversations sometimes just about the language and where folks are at and what y'all are thinking about. So
Dasa caribou leaves.
Oh, yeah. They are a plant that grows mostly in the interior, and it's a medicinal plant. So it's, when you get up to inland Tlingit people, there's no tsacht. So that tsacht is a big medicine for coastal Tlingit people, but it doesn't grow really in the interior. And so they have things up there that don't grow down here. So Daaḳw and Tlingit are two of the big medicines for the coast. Atagweki is another one. The bark, and then also sheikh, so the bark from the red alder and the willow. But in the interior, what's it called? 8 is balsam, and then what isitee is a caribou leaf, and those are ones, and they have Tlingit as well, but those are two medicines they use on a regular basis. And basically, the way it was explained to me is, well, this is a good example. So like something like this. So this is a pretty light brown, I guess. It's a piece of shach. And if it's a light brown like that, that's day-to-day use, especially for something like tsacht. But if you really need to cook it, then you're getting it like a really dark color, kind of like this, and that's when it's a medicine. And so some of the things about harvesting plants and Tlingit is it's really good to go up to those things and to say, like, let's say you're going to get some tsacht. So bring some water, bring some tobacco. Before you do your first harvest, find which plant maybe you're going to draw from first, and then make an offering of a little bit of water, a little bit of tobacco, and talk to it. And you're not talking to just that plant, you're talking to the spirit of it. Isitee. Adjective. Hanagusáakw. Gunchish klein hachanke nyata ygs wasahatu wasagu hatachhankiyan hasaguxaku ade yedizneya wenaq gunchish. So you talk about like medicine, and you could say tsacht kwani, and that's basically talking to the spirits of it. Tsacht yegihas, I've heard people say that as well. And then you thank it, and you say hanaguxisati, you are our medicine. Hanagusáakw, you're going to become our medicine. Well, we're thankful that you help us and that you're near us. That's why I'm going to start to cut you. We want our grandchildren to know how to work with medicines. And so you're really making an offering, you're acknowledging. Then you move into the harvest, and you don't take a whole lot from any particular area. Take some, move along. Take some, move along. And then, so work on it with a good mind, work on it with respect. Sorry, that was a little side launch into medicine stuff. I like that stuff, so. Okay, so let's see, here's another model conversation. Just repeat after me, we'll practice them all and just talk about them a little bit as we go through. Wasaiyati.
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 Keshwasakhat ute.
Wasaakw.
Keshwasakhat ute.
Wasaakw.
So once you put klesh in front of there, that verb is going to change. So yati and ute, they're the same verb, but ute is the negative form. So if you want to say, and what's wild is if you look in the dictionary, you'll see yati has like a whole bunch of different verbs that are related to it. Like all these color verbs. So you could say, I could say gleityachyati, it's white. I could say gleityachute, it's not white. Right? So you could have a negative form for all of those. Another longer one is I could say hin itine chatyati. So there's the yati. I need water. And I don't know why you wouldn't need it. I guess maybe you're fully hydrated. Good for you. Kashin itine chatute. So it goes into that negative form. So when someone asks you a question, the way the shortcut to ask them the exact same question and just turn it back on them. There's two ways. There's a coastal way. Here's an inland way. Coastal way. Wa'eq'a.
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 Wa'equa.
Aqua.
Wa'edes.
Wa'edes.
Days.
Wa'edes.
Wa'edes.
Where's that wa'eh? That's you. Not, it's an independent pronoun.
Right.
This khat is an object pronoun. This isn't the same thing as yadu khat, khataya, khatkhua. That khat has a high tone. This one is tied right to that verb. So we're going to take a look at some of those, right? Akhtuwuyake.
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 Somebody tell me what tuwu is.
Inside.
Yeah, well, tu is inside, right? And then you put the wu on there. It really is kind of like at the inside of, right?
Your soul.
What's that?
I said like your soul.
Yeah, it's like your soul. And so for me, tu wu could mean any of these things. Your spirit, your soul, your thoughts, your intentions, your desires, your feelings. It's all of those things. So it just depends on how it's being used. So in this case, you say tuwu yak'e. The other thing is like, so we saw this is wa'eh, that independent one. Here's a low tone khat, and here's eh. These are both objects. Akh is a possessive pronoun. My tuwu. Eh tuwu. Do tuwu. So a lot of our work is figuring out what type of pronoun that is, so we know how to start turning that pronoun wheel, right? So then we could be able to say, can anybody tell me how to say we feel good? Not quite. So
Okay.
the ach is the thing that needs to change. How do we say our? Like our left.
Ha.
Ha. Ha to woo.
Yake.
We feel good.
Ha to woo yake.
How about she or he, the singular they, feels good?
Do to yake.
Yeah, what? Do to woo yake. They feel good.
Hastu to woo yake.
Yeah, what? Hastu to woo yake. Right? So again, this is a big part of what beginning Tlingit does, is you're building these phrases, you're building these other things, but then you're starting to figure out where these fill in the blank things are, and then what type of list you need to pull from. And then what you're going to do is you're going to internalize these sets of lists so you can just recall which type of thing needs to change. Okay. Wutuat plus D equals, oh, what is that? We're going?
I'm just saying, what is wuta'at? Why do I get that in my head when I think of a group of people?
Yeah. Wutuwa'at was like, we're going. So goot, goot is she or he is going, or went. Wutuwa'at is we went.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Another really sneaky thing about motion verbs is that most of them change whether it's one person or multiple people. And they do it in some kind of weird ways, right? So like you could say, I went there, atechwagut. We went there. Adewutuwa'at. I ran there. Adechwashich. We ran there. Adehashuwaguk. We'll get there. We'll get to that one. But yeah, glad you're thinking that. Okay, so now, next question. Wasa iduwasáakw.
Wasa iduwasáakw.
Wasa iduwasáakw.
Wasa iduwasáakw.
Okay. What's your name? How are you called? So the literal interpretation is, how do people call you? Right? How do people call you? And so this person's name's Susie. Susie, iduwasáakw.
Susie, iduwasáakw.
Susie, iduwasáakw.
Susie, iduwasáakw.
Then we're going to turn that question back, but in this dialogue, Susie goes ahead and asks the full question again. Wa'eqo'a, wasa iduwasáakw.
Wa'eqo'a, wasa iduwasáakw.
Wa'eqo'a, wasa iduwasáakw.
Wa'eqo'a, wasa iduwasáakw.
Jimmy, iduwasáakw.
Jimmy, iduwasáakw.
Jimmy, iduwasáakw.
Iduwasáakw.
Anybody know where the names Susie and Jimmy come from?
The puppets.
Yes.
Tlingit.
Yeah.
Television.
This puppets show that was made in the 1970s, I think early 1970s. If you haven't seen it, you need to go watch all of them. Or you should watch at least, what I would like you to do is watch at least one of these over the weekend and watch it enough times that you think you can almost memorize what they're saying, and then report back to us what you thought about it. The puppet shows themselves are they're a little creepy, not like the language, just like the way that the lighting, there's this kind of weird red orangish lighting. They move, yeah, this kind of spinning music box that sounds like it's kind of running, it's out of tune, or and then the way the things move is just kind of, it's a little creepy, but the language in them are fabulous. It's fabulous. Eva and Johnny Marks, and they're just wonderful. They resurfaced, I think, a few years ago. The archival library found it. So the way you get to them is you go to the internet and you type "Let's Learn Tlingit," but you spell it Clincket. So good luck remembering that. But I'll put I'll put a link. I think if you put TL, it'll probably work. Okay. So now let's take a little bit of a walkthrough of what this chapter is trying to do. So when we say wasa iduwasáakw, we're just teaching people how to just memorize that phrase, right? So iduwasáakw, iduwasáakw, iduwasáakw. The wasa is asking a how type of question. But then if we want to sort of break this down a little bit, the I is you as an object. It's happening to you. The D is a subject, and that's people. People do it, right? The rest is yasak, which is, it's a little bit complicated in terms of what that is, but that's a verb. So sa is the verb root. And it's a really interesting verb root, because I think it means to breathe, to live, to name, and to call out somebody's name.
Wow.
It means to rest. They are all, I think, related. So I used to have them listed out as separate verb roots, because with verb roots in Tlingit, there could be just two of them that sound the same, right? There's T and T, but they're different. But then sometimes it's the same one, and then we get into this conversation about how the language is creating meaning, which is always really interesting. But I was listening to this recording of Ken Austin, and he was talking about this, how they're all from the same root, and it was a really deep conversation. So anyways.
Kate, sorry for interrupting. the KW in iduwasáakw, does that have something to do with like habitual form, or I'm confused?
Yes.
Okay.
So the K is, there's a number of different ways that Tlingit will talk about repetition. And it's really interesting because if it's a CH, it's usually saying this thing happens all the time. But then it could be a K or an underline X or a T or an S apostrophe. So basically there's going to be a suffix there. Suffixes are less common than stuff that comes in the prefix. So the prefix is in the front of the root, the suffix is afterwards. But the most common thing for a suffix is going to be repetition. And it could be like, basically happens regularly, which is usually what the K or the KW is going to be. It's usually just saying it happens, right? For example, I eat Cheerios. If I just eat them. I eat them now and then, regularly. And so, but then I could, if it's the CH, that means every single morning I'm eating Cheerios. I got no variety, right? But then there's other ones that sometimes are talking about, it's an action, but it's made up of a bunch of things that happen at the same time. Like something, clubbing something in the head. So sometimes that gets because you're like club, 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 right? Let's just say it's fish, right? And so, and then other ones, it's talking about repeating things in a series. For example, sewing. So awaka would be they sewed it, like a vest or a shirt or whatever. But if they're doing it right now, you'd say aqis. And that S apostrophe means it's something in a repeated series of things. But this KW means like people regularly call me this, right? Like the old, what was the Kung Fu movie? Bruce, iduwasáakw, right? So that's when we go from I to chat, we're going from you to me, right? So this is where we start really focusing on how these verbs start changing. You iduwasáakw, you iduwasáakw, you iduwasáakw, you iduwasáakw, right? The other thing, sometimes you'll hear you iduwasáakw, sometimes you'll hear ye iduwasáakw. It's a little bit interchangeable these days. Technically, if you say the name first, it should be you. If you're going to separate the name with some other stuff, or you're going to say it after, it should be ye. And then achirk de tawasaku, de sunny, de sai aya achetu wasa. My grandpa wanted me to be named after his uncle. That's why they call me that.
Mhm.
That's the yay and the you. It took me, somebody had to tell me how it worked. It was really cool. So there's another way to say what your name is. It doesn't always have to be, and so one of the things that this chapter is also trying to do is just nudge people away from saying ayachat, 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 which does happen. People just, when they start introducing themselves, everything's ayachat. So they'll say shqaqwe ayachat. I'm like, well, you're not skagway, you know, but so here's another, and we're also just trying to create some variation. Because even though in this chapter there's an introduction template, it's just a guide. There's lots of ways to talk about who you are. And the other thing that I like to talk about is there was a time where standing up in front of people and introducing yourself was a powerful symbol of you being a student of Tlingit. But I'm trying to get folks to stand up in front of people and say things. Because a long time ago, you wouldn't introduce yourself because you're not supposed to talk about yourself in public, right? You're not supposed to really talk about your clan, unless you're sort of like, I want to make sure that I'm telling this history so that you all know it, how our clan is related to your clan. But a lot of times you wouldn't stand up and really introduce, someone would, if you weren't from there, the Nakani, the host, would tell the people who you were. And if you're from there, everybody knows who you are, right? However, if you get to know somebody, they might start, this is an interesting conversation. This is how you start a conversation. If you're an elder, you can. There was one elder, and I just started talking to her. She's like, who are you? Where are you from? Who's your dad? Who's your mom? Okay, so here's another way you could say what my name is. So you'll say your name, and you'll say, iduwasáakw.
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 Okay, so sáakw. So, right, so we're looking at those vowels, the length, and the tone. Right, but this one, we're going to talk about this one after the break, because this one is written short, but it can be short or long. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So, and if you want to say what your name is in English, or you could put other things in there. You could say Dinaka, you could say Lakota, you could say Swedish, like it could be anything. And then the naax comes. Tlingit. We'll do this one in chunks. Tlingit.
Tlingit.
So this is eh. It's a mouth or an opening. The naax part is through or along. Naax, through the mouth. So Tlingit is, and so what's interesting is like that literally means through the mouth of a Tlingit or a human. Tlingit is through the mouth of a white person. And then Daaḳw.aa through the mouth of a Haida. And so, but literally what that translates to is if you said Tlingit in the Tlingit language, usually just it means in English. There is a push from some folks to say something different here, to have like Guski Kwan is the first name that was given to white folks who came here. Ingenen is an old word for England. And this is a harder sound to make. So it is quite common for people to say geinach or just to really a little bit lose this first sound, which should be, or that should be the first sound on here because it comes from eh. So if this is coming out different from folks, it's probably because that eh sound is hard for them to make. And it's okay as long as we understand what people are saying. And then for us as learners, we're just going to have a set of things that we're trying to fine tune. And it could be the eh sound. For me, I always had to think really hard of going from the sh to the ch. Like there's a word, yanash. And that's a tricky one for me to say. Yanash. It means wealth. So, and then you get iduwasáakw, right? One of the things about if you're talking about yourself too, there are some shortcuts, right? Because if you said which would be weird because it's neither of those are probably your name, but you could say it.
I could say it.
People will know once you said the first thing And then if you just said, and so part of the thing about learning a language is you tend to learn these really big, long phrases, and people don't talk like that usually. They'll be like, hey, who are you? My name is Lance. I am from Skagway. I was born. And so that's when you're first speaking Tlingit, that's probably what it sounds like to a lot of speakers, which is fine. Because when you start learning a language, you don't sound like someone who knows the language. That's totally fine and expected. In Hawaii, they say, we let people know they're learning an artificial form of Hawaiian. And people can be mad about that. But we're going to tweak it later and we'll make it into a more naturalized form of Hawaiian. And so we're doing the same type of pattern here. But every now and then we'll just sort of bring up some of that thing. And so I think when we first get started, we're really focused on making those sounds right and remembering the order of these particular words and how to change these things. And so we end up sort of skipping over some of putting some emotion in there. But this is where listening to the language becomes really important. Like the puppet show, there is such good Tlingit in there. And you can hear them talking about what their name is and where, who they are and stuff, just what are they doing, wave at the people. There's a whole bunch of really cool phrases in there. Okay, so then there's iduwasáakw repeated. Which clan or tribe are you? So the thing here is the word na. Na is our word for like a nation or a clan. So that's why you say Daaḳw.aa na. They're the tribe that's way out to sea, right? And so there'll be a couple other, there's some clan names that have na built into them. Here's the Daaḳw.aa type of question. What type? And then you've got isitee as opposed to yati. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So let's do this in chunks. Daaḳw.aa.
Daaḳw.aa.
Naax.
Dasa.
Isitee.
Isitee.
Daaḳw.aa naax isitee.
Daaḳw.aa naax isitee.
Daaḳw.aa naax isitee.
Daaḳw.aa naax isitee.
And we're going to also just keep talking about sometimes it's our instinct as an English language speaker to go isitee, right? To do that thing, that rising tone. Or if I'm saying, hey, what's the word for, I'm trying to think of something that has a low tone in it. But if I'm saying like, what's the word for kushta, or for land otter? And you'll say kushta, because you're not sure, right? You're trying to remember it, but you gotta avoid that thing. And we'll do this too, right? So, and we're just gonna keep working on that because this is isitee. It's all low. But similar to that question, wasa iyatee. Iyatee, isitee. They have the same verb root, but the classifier just changed from ya to si. And the reason that it did is because now we're classifying. That's why it's called a classifier. Instead of just being yati, isitee means to be one of these things. Naax of that group. So this is why when you say a clan name, you can put this underline X after it and say chatsitee. Llukach adich chatsitee. Daaḳw.aa dich chatsitee. Daaḳw naax chatsitee. Irish chatsitee. There's all kinds of things that could go into this blank. It could be a clan, it could be a tribe, or it could be an ethnicity. It could be a profession. Qu atlatuu khatsati. I am a teacher. Or it could be a type of person, right? You could put now I'm an alcoholic, right? And I'm not trying to make fun of alcoholism. I'm just saying, like, it could be I'm a liar, right? Right? And so this just means you're one of those types of things. And so that's what the classifier switch is doing here, from yati to city. The same verb root, but two different verbs. Okay.
Just real quick. So you have to put the X at the end of the word in front of it in order to make that work.
So that marks what the group is, right? And so then this one, the chat, marks who we're talking about. So I could say shukach adich isitee. You are shukach adi. And if my father was a saner, I could say asqewuch sati ach ish. Right? Yenegwachitech sati ach ish. My father was a rolling stone, right? So, but that's what this thing does. And so when we go through this thing at the intermediate level, we start spending some time looking at, like, what is that thing? What does it do? And in this case, it has to be there. And you'll find a couple other verbs where it needs to be there. There's only a few that this underline X pops up on.
How would you say Deshitan? Deshitan?
Yeah, good question. So, Deshitan Chatzati.
Shitan Khatsati.
Yep, and then I'll do it without, I kind of gave it a little gap just so you could hear it. So, Deshitan Chatzati.
Deshitan Khatsati.
Yep, and so just work on, so sometimes there's a gap. Deshitan. We want to eliminate that in Deshitan. So it just runs.
Deshitan.
Yeah, well.
Better.
Yeah.
If for like iduwasáakw is their name, and when they passed away, iduwasaagun was their name, is there a different form of this to say, like if I were to say, like Chuknet Kong Senior, iduwasaagun, Kaigani, or Kaigani Chadas Chatsiti, or not I am, or city, like he or she is or was.
Yeah. So this is, so what we're going to do is we're going to put it into, the first step is we put it into a perfective. So city, and you could say wusity, right? So wusity was like they had become that thing, right? And so you don't see the perfective a whole lot on here unless you're saying that's the time we became true Tlingit, or some part of some story. Or you could say you're connecting it to the flood and stuff. And at that time we became Daaḳw.aa. Right, so when you put the w in front of it, that's the only change you would make, because you just put wu in front of it. And that means it became. That's when it became that thing, as opposed to being that thing. So the next step is if you change the I to an A, and then you put yin at the end. So wusatiyin, it used to be that thing. And it doesn't have to be a big concept like death. Like you could just say, I was a carpenter, but now I'm not. And so what you have there is basically you start with a perfective, and the perfective means like it happened. But the perfective, so this classifier has the letter I in it. Most classifiers that have the letter I means you're saying that it happened. That's what that letter I usually does. It says, yep, verb happened. It's like a little light bulb that turns on. The verb happened. It must change to an A when we say it's not that way now, right? So that's basically what the letter A does for you. So then, and then this in, or in this case, yin, means did but doesn't now. So, and that's why you say iduwasáakw, that it becomes UN in that case.
So,
oh, go ahead.
something like "chotniknuch." That's something you used to say, right? And that you say, sometimes you say. Is that how that works?
Say it one more time.
Like skotniknuch or chotniknuch.
Yeah, skotniknuch, like always tell stories. So the nooch is like all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could you use it in a phrase like that we were just looking at?
Yeah, you could. So you could say, Achishk, ach in awa skotniknuchen. My grandpa used to always tell me stories. And so it's the same thing, but it jumps over to the nooch. So
okay.
Nooch or niche or niche.
That's what I want.
And then it becomes Nujin or Nujin, Nijin.
Oh.
It's not just designated to talking or stories. It could be anything, right?
The in could, yeah, but that's
but not the nooch.
The nooch can, yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
You could say I always eat dry fish. So send it my way, you know. Never. Okay, you guys ready for a break? Well, you're getting one. Okay, take 5. We'll be back. Okay, folks. So, would you like to continue this chapter, or do you folks want to switch and do suffixes on nouns?
I'm interested in suffixes on nouns.
Okay.
Sure, strain us.
Huh? Okay, I think the vote's 1-0. Okay, so we'll take a look at something, and we'll keep going through this other chapter too. So again, so for Tuesday, there's a couple things I want you to work on over the weekend. Find one of these. Let's learn. Let me type it in. This is how you need to spell it. Let's learn Tlingit. So that's how they spell it, I guess, and when they made those videos. And there are these puppet shows, and just there's 10 of them. Pick one and watch it enough times that you feel like you're starting to memorize everything that they have to say. And then come and tell us about it, ask us about it, talk to us about it. So that's one thing. The other thing is try and memorize as many plants as possible. So this includes trees, berries, grasses, mosses, mushrooms, seed plants, kelps, seaweeds. They're all on the table. And then we're going to do the thing where we try to name as many as we can without repeating them. So those are 2 things to work on over the weekend. So now we're going to sort of shift gears a little bit and look at a little bit more of an intermediate concept. Although when we keep moving through the beginning Tlingit workbook, what we're doing is reinforcing stuff that you've probably already learned, but then also taking a close look at some of those things to prepare us for sort of the next step. And then there's also a couple new chapters, I think, that are in there that I think will help. So we're going to look at how to add suffixes onto nouns and how to change nouns. And so basically a big part of learning a language is just learning a bunch of names for things. What's this called? What's that called? What's, you know, so we know how to say wasa iduwasáakw, but you can use that same phrase for what's it called in Tlingit. Anybody know how to say that phrase in Tlingit? To say, what is a table called in Tlingit? Jackie? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. The Daaḳw, wasa iduwasáakw? Oh, no, it would be, sorry. The Daaḳw naax. Yeah. So it's, or the question.
Yeah, you got the question right. You just got to drop that I in there.
Yeah.
The I would be like if you're talking to the table, like, what are you called, table? So when you drop that I, wasa iduwasáakw.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So now, and then you could just say anything. And it's again coming back to this, the octopus concept. You could say Daaḳw, or sorry, not Daaḳw, table, wasa iduwasáakw, Tlingit naax. Or you could say wasa iduwasáakw, table, Tlingit naax. And say Tlingit naax, table, wasa iduwasáakw. There's 3 parts, and you can move them around. Table, Tlingit naax, wasa iduwasáakw. And then if we're all speaking Tlingit, you can also just say wasa iduwasáakw table, because we know you're asking in Tlingit. I'm not going to give you the Haida name for it or anything. So you know, as we learn these things, but we're learning nouns are just the names of things. What's this called? What's that called? What's this called? What's that called? So to start shifting these, we're going to start taking a look at how to add a suffix to something. And so the first part is like, what type of suffixes are there? And the second part is like, how do you put these on? And this is kind of a fun part of language study because the rules, there's lots of rules, but once you internalize them, they make a lot of sense. Once you sort of map the rules out, they kind of don't make sense. But once you just sort of apply them, you're like, okay, yeah, okay, I see it. So to start with, we're going to talk about some words in English, right? And some of you may have done this before, so don't say the answers if you've done this before. Let other people try. So here's 3 words in English: cat, dog, and bus. So we'll just focus on plural, right? Let's do the plural, because in English, plural and possessive are the same, basically. So if I wanted to say multiple of this word, how do I say it, and what's the thing I need to do in English?
Cats.
Cats, right? So what am I doing there?
Just adding the S.
Just adding an S, right? That's it, just adding an S, right? Cats. What about dog? Same thing?
Same thing.
Same thing, okay, dogs. Bus.
Buses, ES.
ES, right? Or SES. I don't know, I guess S just, I don't know if it's, I think it could be either way. I'm not exactly sure. We're not, this isn't an English class, right? So one of the things with English, it's always interesting because it doesn't, it's not about like, it's the sound symbol relationship is just kind of weird. Like you got O-U-G-H and E-I and I before E except after. You just got a whole mess of rules that like, and then there's all these exceptions to those rules anyways, but every language works like that, right? So, with cats, so that's an S sound, right? Is dogs, is that an S sound?
No.
If we were to spell that the way it actually sounds, what would we put there?
Z.
A Z, right? So it would be weird to say, I saw these 2 dogs. Like, it sounds like Daaḳw if you do that, right? You have to force yourself to do that. And then what about this one? How would we spell that one?
B-U-S-S-C-Z.
Yeah, so B-U-S-E-Z, right? So again, E-Z. So we're doing the same thing. We're just trying to pluralize it. But there's 3 different things going on here. Why? What's the reason behind it?
It's the way the words, the letters sound next to each other.
Yep. Yeah. And so when we've got a rule here, right? So for here, we basically have a 3-part rule in English, right? So the first part is to plural or to have a possessive marker on something, you add an S. However, what's the next thing? What's the dog going to show us?
If you're voicing that consonant, it needs to be a Z.
Yes, so all unvoiced consonants, you add an S. If it's voiced, so a G is just a K with your vocal cords. So if you go k, 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 g, 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 k, g, k, g, they're the same sound in your mouth, but you're adding the vocal cords, right? So that this is, there's some mechanics that you don't have to think about if you grow up learning a language, right? Like you don't have to learn this in order to know how to do it. Right? So there's our part 2. However, if it's a voiced consonant, which your vocal cords are going, it'll be a Z. And the Z is the same thing as an S. S, z, s, z. We're just turning the vocal cords on. That's all we do. We just activate the vocal cords. Now what's our third rule?
If there's already an S, you need to add an ES.
Yes. So if there's some sort of S or Z, which we call a sibilant, then you have to add a peg vowel, which is the letter E, and then that has a vocal cord in it, so then it's got to be a Z, right? Because you can't say, hey, look at those three bus over there, right? You have to put something in between, or you can't hear that there's really something there. And so what this is designed to show you is like there's a whole logic behind it. But when you grow up speaking a language, you don't always have to analyze that logic, right? If you had to teach somebody how to do this, because if they were saying bus, then you would have to say, hey, it's buses, right? Just say buses. But then sometimes you don't really know why. But then there's a reason behind it. And usually the reason when you're looking at languages is it's just going to take it the fastest way to get there, right? It's just easier. It's too awkward to try and go from G to S. So that's the first thing we start sort of thinking about, just to set the table for this other conversation. So in Tlingit, the word for noun that we've been using is asai.
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 Its name. So we saw this already with achsai. Achsai, isai, dusai, ahsai. Here's a new possessive pronoun. You say ach jin, my hand, ijin, your hand, dujin, his or her hand. And then if we had some non-human thing here with a hand, like a kangaroo maybe, ajin, its hand. That's what the is doing here. When we were learning Tlingit from the Orange Dictionary, they would say in front of all the body parts. And then it would be, a lot of people get really confused. So they'd say asha, because they just build that right into it, because that's how they memorized it, okay? So one way we could start to change a noun is with an adjective, right? So in English, an adjective modifies a noun. And what's kind of fun in English, here's another thing that maybe you know, like in English, there's like a whole bunch of spots where you can have adjectives, but did you know they have to go in a certain order? Like, you know, there's that children's book, Clifford, the big red dog. Like, he has to be a big red dog. He couldn't be a red big dog. It just sounds weird. But it's because, and you could look this stuff up if you want to later, like there's like 12 different spots, and it's a very specific order that it has to go in. And you just know this stuff. And it's kind of fun. Tlingit, however, you really just have kind of one adjective. You can't just stack them all up like you can in English. But there are two types of adjectives. There's one set that comes before the noun, and there's one set that comes after. And so we're going to use these terms quite a bit, pre and post, or prefix and suffix. So it just means before and after, right? And before means you say it first, and then after means you say it last, or you'll hear it first, right? So for example, here's this thing. Everybody say douche,
Douche,
Douche.
douche.
douche,
Douche.
So we can put an adjective on here to change what kind of cat we're looking at, right? So you could say sheech douche,
Sheesh. Douche.
sheech douche,
each douche,
Sheesh.
douche.
This would work for any kind of noun, right? And so, like, especially animals. We're going out, we're looking for something that we can put in our freezer. And I say, ichli, Sheech kuwakan awe. Don't. It's a female deer, right? You can also have douche shan.
Douche Sean.
Douche shan.
Dushan.
That's an old cat, right? And so that's ka shan, shawat shan. Be very careful with those. Get yourself in trouble. But that's how you'd say an old man and an old woman. The shan is old, usually for living things. It doesn't always work great for like an old car or an old house or something. So here's a list of these, right? So one of the things we start doing in intermediate Tlingit is just building these lists of things. So here's some that could come before. So you could have a good cat, a douche. You could have a strange cat, kasayeyi douche. And so this kasayeyi, sometimes this is how we build whole new nouns. So this is a guka. Kasayeyi guka would be a thermos. It's just a strange cup. It keeps things warm. Qanch is tobacco. Kasayeyi qanch was recently legalized, and now there's stores where you can go buy it. Kadoosh.
Kadoosh.
A male cat. So again, kadziskowe. Gook. Un. It's a male moose. Do it. Shoot it. Right. Kustindoosh.
Dush.
That would be like Clifford. That's like house science. So there are stories about Naax, this giant octopus, and Kutzin, this gigantic rat. Sisk, there was a gigantic owl. We've got stories. Owl, this giant crab. We've got stories of those things. Sheech, yeast. So yeast would be new. Again, so the line at the end means there's gotta be a noun that comes after it, right? And then here's some other ones. Sakw. This one is used, it's going to become that thing. For example, you could say, ach shat sakw. My fiance, she's gonna be my wife, or ach chuch sakw. He's gonna be my husband. Sean is old. Klein is big. Ton, klein, away. It's a big sea lion. Uwa, it looks like that thing. Daaḳw.aa is the name for a flying squirrel. It means looks like a squirrel. Hook, dried. Gunilchish, sa gli hook. Thank you for giving me dried seal meat. So this is where the beef jerky type of stuff will come in, or deer jerky, seal jerky. And then yi used to be. So you could have a chuch sakw. You could have a chuch yi, an ex-husband. And so this, I've also heard speakers should say, ach ish yi, ach ha'i, hayaw sakayan. There it is. My father, he used to be my father. And the reason she said that, because she's telling us he's gone now. Even that's still her dad, but she's using that to say like he passed away. So these are adjectives. There's quite a few of them. What I'll do is I'll post this slideshow so you guys can have it for your review. But I'll post under our class page tonight a list of just a whole bunch of adjectives. They're pretty handy to have. So you could just start saying big, little, things like that. Any questions about that? Okay. So on to suffixes. Here are the most common ones that you could have. A lot of them talk about direction or just the way things are there. So it's like Tlingit has like 4 or 5 different ways to say something is on it or is there. And it just depends on how it's there. Is it just sitting there? Is it resting there? Did it just get there? Is it moving around there? Those types of things. So we'll take a look at these two. So if you put one hand up, and then this other hand's going to be the thing that moves. And you're going to say, day, Daaḳw, day, Daaḳw, day, Daaḳw, towards and away, right? Towards and away, towards and away. But these ones have a shorter dash, like a hyphen there. And that means these are suffixes. They must attach to something. You can't just say day, right? And it's not that unusual, right? Like for example, things, sometimes there's a relationship there and it has to be there. Like if someone says, hey, have you seen my keys? It's like, oh yeah, they're on. But they're on what? Right, and so the same thing, there's certain words that need to belong to something. And these ones, they attach right to the end. So the daaḳw, you shouldn't be writing as its own word. Hit daaḳw, you just attach it right to that, from the house. Hit daaḳw goed, he walked over here from the house, or she did, right? So this one you have daaḳw. Then you have day, which is to or towards. Naax is through or along. The T is to be at something, like arriving, recently arriving at. That's how I like to think of it. The w or is also at, but if you're going to use w, you cannot use a verb in that same sentence. It's for a verbless sentence. Way do it's right there, right? Here's this, or sometimes it's nothing, to be resting or residing at. So I could say, I'm in Skagway. I'm in Haines. And then, and this is a different than the other one we looked at that you would put at the end of a clan, right? And this one means to be, it keeps going back there or it's moving around there, okay? And again, like when you see a list, it's like this big list of things, but then we'll start looking at examples and it will make sense. And we're not gonna look at these ones yet. I just want you to know they exist. You'll start seeing them like cheinach, through the mouth, cheidach, from the mouth, cheide, to the mouth. We use all 3 of those. So I could say Tlingit cheinach in the Tlingit language. I heard it from Nora Marks, Daaḳw.aa. And then hastuchede, when you're at ku'ich and you're giving a fire dish to their mouth, you're making an offering of food to your ancestor, right? Powerful stuff. And so you, again, like the list is kind of abstract, but then we'll start looking at examples to try and help us to remember. Everybody okay? Okay. We probably won't get to the end of this, but we're going to look at a set of rules. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bunch of nouns. And you're going to tell me what that noun is called. So you're going to have to remember what it's called. These are all from the first 2 chapters of Beginning Tlingit. And then I'm going to ask you to say my, whatever that thing is. All right, so then we're going to put this rule to the test. And once you put it to the test, like all these rules, they do start to make sense. So in Tlingit, we have a prefix and a suffix. Prefix means it attaches to the front. Suffix means it attaches to the end. When we get to verbs, there's always more prefixes than suffixes. When we get to nouns, there's only suffixes that you could put on there. And English has these as well. You know how to use these already in English. Like take the English word safe. You could say unsafe. You could say safely. Or you could say unsafely. So you already know how to use these. Tlingit has them as well. They just have their own set of rules. So, for example, let's start looking at how to put a suffix on these things. So, here's these things. We're going to say their names. Hit.
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 Douche.
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 Sushk.
Suck.
Sushk.
Suck.
Cake.
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 Cooked.
Cook.
Cooked.
Te.
I snuck a really difficult word in there. I like that one. They're so pretty looking too, and then you see me say cooked, which I think sounds pretty too. Okay. So here's the first three sets of suffixes we're going to learn. Okay. And so these have fancy words, but this really means if you want to make it small, put k on the end. You want to say there's more than one, put on the end. You want to say there's a bunch of littles, isani or usani. That's all you have to do. Okay. So again, there's two of these. There's a to be at somewhere, and then there's a to be plural. Whenever you put the k on it, it's gonna get cute. It's just something that happens with Tlingit. Also, this is in a whole bunch of kinship terms. Keek. If a son is yeet, but if you're talking directly to your son, you say yitk. A daughter is see, but if you're talking right to your daughter, you say sik. Yachhan is a grandchild. If you're talking right to your grandchild, you say chunk. That's what this is, right? It's also endearing, right? It's just something, the way that Tlingit works. So here's all these words: hit, kate, tashk, kokt, te. What we're going to do is we're going to add these suffixes on them to see what they sound like. So, starting right here. Hitk.
Hitk.
Hit.
Hitk.
Hit.
Hit.
It's a little house. Cake.
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 This is not a puppy. This is like a pug, or like one of these little dogs that people put in baskets and carry around or whatever. Eagle.
Yadi.
Yeah, Kate Yedi. So Yedi after any of these would then be, well, Hit Yedi could be a small house too. Kate Yedi would be a puppy. Sash Yedi would be a, I don't know in English what we call a baby ground squirrel. Kuk Yedi would be a swan. What do you call a swan in English? A baby swan.
Signet.
Signet. That language is too hard. We're not going to learn that one. All right. Sashk. Sashk. You are going to have double Ks sometimes. Right? In this case, a K and then a pinch K. So Tlingit, sometimes you're going to have these repeating consonants. It's a little rare, but you'll have this. Like you could say, we'll look at other examples later. So this one gets a little tricky. So
Can you walk us through that sound real one more time?
Yeah. And so when you have something like this, that does have three hard consonants right in a row.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at just this very first part of it, because even the first part of this word is tricky, right?
Good.
This is one of the hardest things to say in Tlingit, right? And so just for fun, just walk around and just keep saying it. And so these are the things you're trying to do with Tlingit is sometimes you're just making sound, you're like, oh, I got to work on making this one sound, right? In this case, maybe all one, the vowel is the only easy part of this word, right? So q is a G in the back of the throat, we'll call it a back G. K is a K sound, also a back K. Is a squishing of the tongue to make that sound. And then is a regular K, but without your lungs. So that's the thing, is getting these double. So basically you've got like a uvular, a back sound, an ejective, and another ejective. So you're making the end part without your lungs at all. Take.
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 So a word that ends with a short high vowel. Once you put a suffix on there, it will push that vowel long and long. A short high vowel that takes a suffix will go long and low. This is why we like to talk about there being 4 sets of vowels, and it can move. It can go from high to low, low to high, short to long, long to short, and it does so in pretty predictable ways. But this is why, like, the vowels are they are important, and so is the tone, right? And so for a lot of us, when we start learning Tlingit, even me, like I'll mess the tone up, and I'll catch myself doing it too. But don't worry about it. Don't give up. These are just the things we sort of watch for. Okay. When Tlingit pluralizes, it's not the same as English. In English, you'll say 1 cat, 2 cats. Look at those cats. In Tlingit, you'd say tlekdush, dechdush. It doesn't pluralize just because you're counting them and you're at more than 1. It pluralizes when it says there's a lot and there's more than we can count right now, or you just need to know there's a bunch of them. So Tlingit doesn't actually pluralize very often. It's not like English, so you don't have to say dechit, but you would just say hitkawe ayewuti. There were houses there, so you need to know that there are multiple ones. So it's a language logic thing to just sort of think about. But houses, hitk, hitk. So this one goes, this one goes. This is a clicky thing. This is a scrapey thing. Dogs. Cake.
Cake.
Kate.
Cake.
Okay. Ground squirrels.
Silk.
Salk.
Everybody, let me do it first, and then you guys can do it. Salk. And this is the time of our Tlingit studies where we listen for this. If we're making ul, that ul sound, we're going to switch it to sh. And this is one of the trickier parts, because we're going to see that letter L, and our brain's going to go, I know that. That's the la sound, la, 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 all day long. But that ul sound exists in Smalgich, so it's in Simshian, it's in Dekina, it's in Haida. There is no voiced L in Tlingit. Except for there were some old people who would make it, and I don't know why. I think it was kind of a just a, I guess you call it kind of a speech impediment or just a sound substitution. Anyways, to make this X, you're gonna have some fluid in your mouth. Swans. Rocks. Teig.
Teig.
Teig. So we're going to pick it up here next week. So watch one of the Let's Learn Tlingit videos, learn some plant names. Don't freak out about little swans or, you know, multiple swans. But I just want to end with this. This K and this X exist in the same spot, so you cannot have both of them. So when I think about them, sometimes I'll think, oh, it's like the little thing that spins in the slot machine. If it's a cherry, it can't be the lemon or whatever they have on there. So that's the reason why you would have to add sani to have little plurals, a bunch of little ones, because you can't have this. And so isani, sani, shak sani is shak sani, yeah, little women. Isani is boys, and that means little tree trunks. Is the base of the spine or a tree trunk. And Nora explained to me, she said, those boys, they're all spine. And so you'll start to see this sani. There's a couple of words with this sani. Like you can have atcha is food, atcha isani are snacks. So it's little plurals, right? So it's fun. It's fun when you learn how to do this because you'll start seeing them in the language. So we'll pick up here, and this is going to lead us up to the possessive suffix in Tlingit to go from te to ach te ye, my rock, toakan te ye, your rock. So you can see how that name gets put together using this same set of rules right here. And so now there might come times where we have to come up with a name for something. Oh yeah, we're gonna name the spot that's on our land. We can do it using this type of stuff. It's just getting this information to be familiar to us. All right, gonna shuhan. Rest well, give your brains a break. Give your, today I was in a meeting that give yourself a face massage. So do some of that stuff. Do whatever you need to do to relax. I guess I'm a little vial around here of like some kind of peppermint thing. I just smell it sometimes. So you go, Juan. Have a great weekend. We'll see you folks on Tuesday. Bring your questions, your thoughts, and sheesh.
Sheesh.
Goodness, cheese.
Uche gaktuts in.
Yeah, kwati goodness sheesh.
Sheesh. Let's do Tlingit D&D.
Yeah, away. Yeah, kwati. I'm gonna be a half elf. Elf shu chatzati.
I'm embarrassed to turn on my video now that I shaved.
Oh, look at you. I was told I can't. I can't until I get a deer, so I better hurry up because this is rough.
Yeah, I always tell Stacy, I go, should I shave? She goes, it's up to you. I go, okay. I'm not gonna do it. The last time I go, should I shave? She goes, it's time.
You lost 10 years.
I know.
Yeah, it looks good, man. Frank, you really do actually look real good. If I get rid of this, I look ridiculous, man.
That's how I feel. I was like, my face, at least my face is so smooth. It's like a baby.
Ooh.
Like Kosh was like, what did you do? And I was like, I was trying to be like you. He's like, all right. He goes, but my whiskers are coming in.